Everybody should be going to 14C right now and opening that document. I'm going to work with you and model how to do the first few documents. It was a little bit harder than our primary investigations of the past. All right, so here I am. Your document should be on the right. Split your screen. My document's on the left. Welcome to Investigation 14C. This is the French Revolution and Haitian Revolution primary and secondary document analysis and comparison. We're going to look at a number of documents. We're going to perform analysis on the documents the same way we always have, using our historical critical thinking skills. And then we're going to compare the primary documents of the French Revolution and the secondary documents of the French Revolution to the primary and secondary documents of the Haitian Revolution to see what is similar. What do they have in common? And then you'll write a comparison essay and construct an argument. Let's get started. Okay, everybody split your screen. Document 1, discontent, which means resentment. Discontent in Haiti and Latin America. All right, so what do we see on the left? This big triangle. What's at the top? It says peninsulares. What are those? Oh, look, people born in Spain who live in the New World. Okay, well, who is underneath them in the social class ladder? Creoles. What's a Creole? Europeans born in the colonies. Oh, so maybe they have a mother and father that was born in Spain. But these people, Creoles, they were born in the colonies. Maybe they were born in Haiti or born in Dominican Republic or born in one of the South American colonies. So they're called a Creole. They're second-class citizens. What's a mestizo? Mixed Native American and European. And a mulatto is mixed African and European. Oh, wow, they're third-class citizens when you count down. They don't have many rights. They're looked down upon. But wait a minute. Who's at the bottom of the totem pole here? Everybody looks down at this time, historically, on Africans and Native Americans in the New World. They're on the bottom of the social class ladder here. So you can see the people on the bottom suffer the most. And then the people above them, maybe a little bit less, but they still suffer the limitations of being looked down upon, as well as the Creoles. The peninsulares are on the top of the social class. They have wealth, they have power, they have control of society. So now let's look over here. How did the social classes and ethnic structures in Spanish colonies lead to discontent or resentment? Let's take a look at Creoles. Well, Creoles resented the Spanish being treated as second-class citizens by the peninsulares. Okay. So let's look down here. Was everyone in the Spanish colonies angry for the same reasons? Well, the Creoles treated as second-class citizens. So type this. Treated as, we're going to abbreviate, second-class citizens. What about, give you a second. Treated as second-class citizens. That's why they were angry. There's a lot of anger going on here in these Spanish colonies. Mestizos and mulattoes, well, they were angered that they were not treated as citizens at all and did not have the same power as whites. Not treated as citizens. Creoles treated as second-class citizens. They were angry about that. They suffered. Mestizos and mulattoes, they weren't even treated as citizens. What about Native Americans and Africans? Well, they were really angry because they were enslaved and they were treated inhumanely, inhuman, less than human. Treated as slaves, less than human. Okay? I'll give you a second to keep up. So now, using this secondary piece of evidence, this chart, we've revealed there's a lot of anger in the New World, in the colonies that Spain controls. And the anger is different Creoles are angry because they're treated as second-class citizens. Mestizos and mulattoes are angry because they're not even treated as citizens. And Native Americans and Africans were treated as slaves and less than human. All right, so there's a lot of anger here. This is discontent in Haiti and Latin America. Where does the anger come from? Okay, so now let's move on here. What is this, right? What is it? This is a chart that shows the social classes in Latin America. Right? It's a chart that shows the social classes in Latin America. There's our social classes. And it reveals discontent and anger, right? That's really the purpose here. Okay, this is the chart. And then who said it? We don't have a source, so we just put unknown. Purpose, to reveal discontent, anger. Between the social classes of Latin America, we're uncovering and revealing the drama that existed in the past using primary and secondary evidence. This is a window into the past. Okay, here you go. So what is the meaning or the message in this document? Well, let's take a look again. The Creoles, second-class citizens, mestizos not treated as citizens, and Native Americans treated as slaves. So the message here to show other people of Latin America unhappy with the social class system because many felt it was unfair. There we put that in our own words. This is drama. All right. Now, what is the quote that proves the message is true? Well, there's no quote here. It's not primary. So look what it says. If no text, describe in your own words. So what proves that people were unhappy? Well, this is a triangle that moves up, right? So it's an unfair social class system. This is an unfair system in which only the people at the top receive the benefits. All right. So we've uncovered what life was like in many parts of Latin America at this time for people living under the power of Spanish, French, and British Europeans who were not from Spain or France or Britain. So if you have mixed ancestry, in your blood and you lived in the New World, you were treated like a second-class citizen, not a citizen at all, or less than a human being. Okay? The odds are your life was tough. Let's move on to document 2. Now we're moving to France. Discontent in France, so resentment in France. Now we have to perform some analysis here. We're going to compare these two documents. We learned the discontent in Latin America, right? Central and South America, and the Caribbean is Latin America and all the people who live there. Now let's go to France. These are the social classes in France. The 3 estates, social classes, in pre-revolutionary France. So before the revolution in France, this is what life was like. You had the church, you had the wealthy, and you had the middle-class city workers and all the peasants. Look how many more peasants there are in the 3rd estate than in the 2nd estate with the wealthy and the 1st estate with the clergy. Let's look. Church, 1st estate. 1% of the people owned 10% of all the land in France. Well, that seems a little unfair. Shouldn't it be more equal, right? Let's look at the wealthy, the 2nd estate, the nobles, they're the rich. 2%, they only made up 2% of all the people in France. So 2% of the rich owned 25% of the land. That seems even more unfair. What about the 3rd estate? All the poor and the small group of middle class. 97% of the people only owed 65% of the land. Well, that's super unfair. All right, discontent in France. Why are people angry in France? Well, I think owning land, it was so unfair in that country. People were pretty angry. Let's take a look at this. Look at this. Land ownership. Who pays taxes in the 3 social classes before the revolution? All right. Look at the population. It says 3rd estate down here, 2nd estate, 1st estate. So the white is the rich, the black is the church, and like the gray is the poor. Look on the left where it says population. 98% are poor. Then 1.5% are the church and 0.5% are the rich. So out of the population, look at this, the land ownership. That's the same pie chart. They turned the grid up here into a pie chart. 65%, 25%, and 10. So the church owns 10% of the land. This is all the land in France. The church owns what's in black. The rich own what's in white. And this 98% over here only owns 65% of the land. Now, here's the thing that angers the 98% of poor people. Look on the right, government taxation. Who pays taxes? Every poor person. Wait, where's the black for the church? Where's the white for the rich? They don't pay taxes. Only the poor pay taxes. Now you see the discontent in France. The poor only owned a small part of the land, but they paid all of the taxes, and the rich paid nothing, and the church paid nothing. So now let's move down here. What is it? This is a chart that shows percentage of population who owned land and paid taxes. Okay, it's a chart that shows the percentage of population of France, who owned land and paid taxes. The church and the rich almost owned almost half of the land in France, and they paid 0 taxes. Meanwhile, the poor that can't pay their own bills have to pay taxes on the land. That's not fair. Okay, who said it? Unknown, it's just a chart. What's the purpose? To reveal the unfair land ownership and taxation system in France. And boy, were the poor people angry about this, discontent. What is the meaning or message in this document? Well, it's to show why so many poor French peasants and middle-class workers were so unhappy with the land ownership and taxation system in France. Okay, make sure you're following me. That's what you should be typing right now. And then the quote that proves the message is true. There's no quote here. So if it says, if no text, describe in your own words. Poor and middle class people were very unhappy with the French government because the land ownership and taxation systems were unfair. Well, we could say the systems heavily, this is how we make it our own word, right? Favor the rich. The church. Those poor people and middle-class people really suffered. So if you can empathize, this is another door into the past. What was life like in France before the revolution? You can empathize with the situation of the poor. You're so poor, you can barely make enough money to buy a loaf of bread to feed your family, and all you eat is bread. You can't afford meat or vegetables. All you eat is bread, and then the taxation person comes to your door and says, give me everything that you have. Your family's forced to give the little money you have to the taxation individual. Now you can't afford to buy bread. Now your family starves. Think about the level of anger these people would have toward the government. So now we've used historical documents, secondary historical documents, to look at what was life like in Latin America, where people from Spain, Britain, and France had all the power. What was life like? And then we looked at France, where the church and the very small percentage of rich had all the power, most of the land, and the taxes. They didn't pay them. Now let's move on. Remember, if you miss anything, I'll post the video and you can go back and fast forward to the section. Look at this now. Now let's look at some primary documents, the words of people who were there, okay? This is document 3, the lives of Haitian and Dominican slaves in St. Dominic, okay, in Haiti. Observations from Girard Chantrans, a Swiss traveler in 1785. So this person from Switzerland goes on a trip to Haiti, and then he writes down what he sees in Haiti. So this is how we can say that this person is probably not biased and not favoring anyone, because he's not French, he's not Spanish, he's not Haitian, he's not Native American, not African. This is somebody that's from a different country. We don't know why this person's there, but we do know that they're not any of those other affiliations that would favor one group, right? So let's see what Girard Chantras, this Swiss traveler from Switzerland, what he sees. They were about 100 men and women of different ages, all occupied in digging ditches in a cane field. That's where you get sugar from, cane. The majority of them naked or covered with rags. The sun shone down with full force on their heads. Must have been hot. Sweat rolled from all parts of their bodies. Their limbs weighed down by the heat, fatigued with the weight of their picks and by the resistance of the clayey soil, baked hard enough to break their implements, strained themselves to overcome every obstacle. So the sun was so hot, it baked the dirt hard as a rock. And they had pointy sickles and picks that they're trying to break the ground in order to get the cane out of the ground to get the sugar. That must have been a struggle in the heat. A mournful silence reigned. Mournful. You would mourn if somebody passes away. A mournful silence reigned. Exhaustion was stamped on every face, but the hour of rest had not yet come, still working. The pitiless eye of a manager patrolled the gang, and several foremen armed with long whips moved periodically between them, giving stinging blows to all who, worn out by fatigue, were compelled to take a rest. Men or women, young or old. Wow. So the manager walked around with a whip, and if you took a break, then you get cracked with the whip. If you were a man, if you were a woman, if you were old, or if you were a young child, you're going to get cracked with the whip. And the whip lash splits your skin wide open on your back. And the heat of the sun could infect it. Think about that experience for Haitian and Dominican slaves as they worked in the cane fields in Haiti. All right, are we ready? All right, what is it? All right, CLR, James, The Black Jacobins, Toussaint Louverture and the San Domingo Revolution, 2nd edition, New York. Okay, this is an excerpt from a book of the travels of Girard Chantras. 1785. We said it, Girard Chantras. I mean, you can just copy and paste at that point. What is the purpose? Does Girard want to inform us of what he saw? Does he want to entertain us? I don't think any of this is funny. Does he want to persuade us to believe a version of the truth? Well, I think what he saw is historically accurate. I think this is to inform us. To inform the audience of the experience of Haitian slaves in the cane field. All right, so there you go. Man, they suffered poorly. Remember, they were on the bottom of the social ladder of that triangle. What is the meaning or message in this document? I think it's to reveal pain and suffering of the Haitian slaves. Right? To reveal the pain and suffering of the Haitian slaves in the cane fields. And then, well, what's the quote that proves the message is true? Well, unfortunately, you can't copy and paste it because it's a screenshot, but we're going to find a nice quote here. You can use a lot of this, right? I'm going to use the last piece. Pitiless eye of the manager, giving stinging blows to all who, worn out by fatigue, were compelled to take a rest. Men or women, young or old. Remember, put it in quotes because you can use this to reveal the suffering which led to resentment and anger, which led to revolution. That's why we're doing this. Okay. So this was what life was like for the lowest class, African and Native Americans in the New World as slaves under the ownership of the French or the Spanish or the British. Right, document 4. Now we're going back to France. Look, document 4, the lives of the French. Third estate. Oh, the poor peasants. Here is a quote from somebody who was there, living as a poor peasant. All right. So now we can look at this to see if the accuracy is similar to document 2. Now we're back in France. Whoops, this is document 4. Let's fix that. Document 4, Travels in France in 1792 by Arthur Young. Arthur Young was an English gentleman farmer who visited France at the start of the French Revolution. His goal was to determine the cultivation, wealth, resources, and national prosperity of France by describing what he witnessed. So he had to describe what he witnessed, okay, to try to reveal the greatness of France. So he's like, all right, how great is this place, France? Let me go walk the country and travel and talk to the people and let's see what their experiences are. Let's take a look. July 12th, 1789. Here we go. Follow along with me. The 12th. This is Arthur Young in France. Walking up a long hill to ease my mare, that's a horse, female horse, I was joined by a poor woman who complained of the times and that it was a sad country. Demanding her reasons, she said her husband had but a morsel of land, small, one cow, and one poor little horse. Yet they had a francher of wheat and 3 chickens to pay as quilt rent, a payment that allowed the husband and wife to continue to use their land. So they had to give up important animals they would use to like make food for them, like milk and eggs, right? And 1 to the seigneur, which is the rich person, the noble in charge. And 4 franchar of oats, 1 chicken and 1 sow, a small unit of money to pay to another. Besides, 1 very heavy tallies, taxes on the land and its produce, and other taxes, which means they had nothing. They had very, very, very little. And the little they had to keep giving it up to the rich. So they're stuck in this system of poverty. It was said at present that something was to be done by some great folks for such poor ones, but she did not know who nor how. But God sent us better. Carle tallies and de droits and de escontre. But the taxes and laws are crushing us. I'm going to underline that. This is not a screenshot. We can make notes. This woman, at no great distance, might have been taken for 60 or 70 years old. Her figure was so bent, her face was so frowed or wrinkled and hardened by labor. But she said she was only 28. What? Come on. An Englishman who has not traveled cannot imagine the figure made by infinitely the greater part of the countrywomen in France. It speaks, at the first sight, hard and severe labor. Oh, really? To what are we to attribute this difference in the manner of the lower people in the two kingdoms of England and France? To government. So this individual is walking through France and meets a lot of women. And he thinks he's walking by and talking to all these old ladies and all these old women that look like they're 60 or 70. This particular woman reveals she's only 28. So many years of hard and severe labor completely beats down the health of these individuals. So now I come back up here. Oh my goodness. A mournful silence reigned, exhaustion, worn out by fatigue. These are the slaves in Haiti. Now you come over here in France. These are free, poor people in France. The government system is so unfair and the labor is so severe and hard. Someone that's 28 looks like they're 60 or 70 years old. My goodness. All right, let's move on. What is it? Okay. What is this? Remember, Arthur Young was an Englishman, gentleman farmer who visited France at the start of the French Revolution. Travels in France by Arthur Young. This is an excerpt from a book of travels that shows observations of the French countryside. Observations of poor commoners living in the French countryside. Okay? Arthur Young, who said it. The purpose to inform the reader of the conditions in which the poor French lived countryside. And this is to inform the reader as well. What is the meaning or message in the document? This is to reveal how an unfair government system, to reveal the effects of an unfair French government system and the consequences, let's say the negative consequences, on the poor commoners. Okay, so I have to find a quote that proves that. And as I read, I underlined it. And you can copy and paste it as well. Then I want to add a second part. Hard and severe labor. Copied and pasted it. You to finish right there. We've approached the end of the period. Tomorrow, you're going to move forward with these documents in the same way that we performed analysis today to reveal more of the reasons why the French Revolution and the Haitian Revolution occurred, and then the similarities in the actions taking to cause revolution, the violence during the revolution, and what these countries looked like after the revolution. I hope this helps.